Police chief, city of Norman, Oklahoma, and I've been here 8 years.
Okay. And length of career in law enforcement?
30 years.
30 years. Okay, good deal. Okay, we'll just kind of jump into it, and like I was telling you, these will just be questions about your interest in the position here, and things of that nature.
Okay.
So first off, why Little Rock? What draws you to Little Rock?
Well, it's always been on my interest list. I became a chief first in 2008, and when I did that, Little Rock wasn't open at that time. I've been to Little Rock. I've visited. I've been to conferences there. I have friends there. I have family in Memphis. So I've frequented Little Rock numerous times, and each time I've been there, I've just fallen in love with it. But however, in 2008, when I became a chief, the position was not open, and so I thought I had an obligation or responsibility to go get the chiefing experience, to prepare me to be a chief of Little Rock one day. So it wasn't open when I got the job in 2008 in Lancaster, Texas. In 2014, when it became open again, and Chief Bugner was hired, I had just been in Norman for 3 years, and I had given the city council, I had given the city manager, and my officers and the citizens, I had given them my word that I would not start looking for a large department for at least a minimum of 5 years. So I had committed to Norman. I wasn't going to break my promise. And so the times that it's been open, I just haven't been available to. It wasn't the right time. And so now is the right time for me to apply and hopefully be selected.
What do you know about the city of Little Rock in terms of its leadership in the news recently? What's top of mind, and what do you know about the city? Just things that have come up lately.
Yeah, I know that I know that it's a strong mayor city now, which is there's quite a few strong mayor cities. I know that it was a city manager, council form of government. That kind of frightens some people. It doesn't frighten me. One of the things that that really impresses me is that the new mayor speaks highly about transparency. He speaks very highly about partnerships, community partnerships, and reduction of crime. So I know that's a big key. I know that's some of the things he ran on his platform. Each and every one of those, I think we parallel each other on those. I know for a fact since becoming a chief, each and every one of those have been very important to me. I live by those. By those. My officers follow those rules, and the community accepts that. And so I think with a new mayor coming in, and he's already established what his vision is, I think that's important. And so I know that there's some concerns about criminal activity. There's some concerns about there's some new technology that the department is looking at. And so I think those are things that I find very interesting.
You kind of leading into my next question, you brought up criminal activity. Here in Little Rock, in the first month of this year, we've had 9 homicides. Crime is really top of mind for people here in Little Rock. As a finalist for this position, what kind of challenge does that present for somebody coming into a police department as a new chief? How big of a hurdle is a city coming into it knowing you've got 9 homicides already this year?
Well, I think the main thing that the citizens have to realize is that when you're a chief, that's what you're hired to do. So there should not be any surprise that the chief of what the expectations from a chief are. The first thing is what I think is that some cities they become accustomed to a certain type of crime, and when I say that, it doesn't mean they're accepting. It's that this is what we expect. And so I think that you have to change that mindset that it's not okay to have 9 homicides first of the year. And so you have to dig down deep and see what's actually going on. That's where city involvement, citizen involvement is important. That's where community meetings and listening, that's where technology plays a major role. One of the things that we don't do very well in law enforcement is that, and we're starting to do a better job, is getting our citizens involved in some of the technology that we use. And so I think the citizens would like to know what we're doing and probably give us some tips on, okay, maybe you could do this better, maybe you could do that better. What about this? I don't think it's a hurdle. I think it's the fact that that's part of a chief's job, and the chief should come in with some really good ideas. It's not really reinventing the wheel. It's basically what can you do differently? What can you reach back and see? What could you do differently? And also, what's the historical issues going on here? Have we just accepted the fact that this particular area or these areas are going to be violent, or are we going to roll up our sleeves and are we going to really do something about it? So it's not acceptable for a city to have that many homicides, no matter how large it is. That's a big concern. And what can we do internally, and what can we do externally? Absolutely. I mean, you've got to be willing to accept the challenge. So to me, it's not a hurdle. It's basically it's not a race of speed. It's a marathon sometimes, but you prepare for marathons, and you got to prepare. You got to be willing to win a marathon. So you got to prepare yourself. The diet, the training, and things like that. So it's the same thing with getting a handle on violent crime. You just can't say, well, that's always happened here. And I think the city has gotten a bad break at times because people still recall the HBO special regarding the gangs in Little Rock, and I think that there are people that still believe that's the Little Rock. Well, that's not the Little Rock I've seen.
Go ahead and continue if you want.
Okay. Yeah, that's not the Little Rock I've seen. That's not the Little Rock that officers tell me about and citizens tell me about. But they do want answers. They do want responses, and it can be done.
I was doing just a little research on you. I was reading an article. You may remember it. This is back in October. The OU campus did it, the OU Daily, kind of a profile on you. And I was reading through some parts of this, and you were pretty candid about racial challenges, things you experienced, even, it sounds like even there in Norman. If you don't mind sharing, what kind of challenges did you face there? And the only reason I ask is because as Chief Buckner left, he did a public interview with us where he brought up the issue of race and how he faced challenges here as well. So I'm just kind of curious on what you experienced there and how that may translate in a city where the racial ratio is quite different than Norman.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, but keep in mind I was the chief of police in Lancaster, Texas, that's 75% African American. And so, I was a commander in Arlington. So I've been a high-level commander in very diverse cities. So that's not even an issue. The thing that I've gone through is that I think being an outsider and just not being the normal site. You got to understand, coming into Norman, I was the first outside chief. Just like when I was in Lancaster, I was the first outside chief. I was the first African-American chief. I think a lot of it is just the unknown of the fear. You're always going to have that challenge that you were selected based on your ethnicity and not on your qualifications. I think that's my responsibility to show that I am qualified and demonstrate that I'm qualified. I don't try to hit people in the face with that. My responsibility is that I have a reputation of being fair. I have a reputation of being honest. When I see a problem, I address it. So if there is a racial problem, we address that. We don't ignore it. The worst thing a police chief can do is know there's a problem and ignore it, because it's not as blatant as some people might say. So, coming in, giving everybody a fair shot, listening to everybody, but realizing that there are some challenges in law enforcement that minorities face, and realizing you have to deal with those head on. But I think the main thing is that in law enforcement, what I've seen also is the majority of the department, you're going to have those individuals that have issues with you no matter what. No matter how you look, no matter what, you're going to have those issues. But I think a large percentage of the force and officers, they want a good leader. They want somebody who's going to lead them. There are going to be those challenges. There are just going to be those individuals, Terry, that just don't like people, just don't like me because of the way I look. That doesn't stop me. That doesn't stop me from being an effective leader. That doesn't stop me from being who I am and be the chief of the entire department or the chief of the city. But you have to hit those head on. You have to have those conversations with people. What I found a lot of that is fear, and I have a responsibility to educate the community and educate the department. What I found is that a lot of times you have individuals that have never encountered minorities. And the only time they've encountered minorities are based on what they've seen on TV or based on what they've heard. And so when you have those very difficult conversations with people, when they ask, why is there a problem or their concern or their contention in certain areas between the minority community and law enforcement, and you have to explain the history. This is what happened. This is why. It's not personal. It's not personal against you. It's personal against the history of law enforcement. However, this is what we're going to do to eliminate that or reduce that here. So it's all about education with me. It's all about being honest. It's all about facing these obstacles head on. It's all about embracing who I am and taking this position and making changes.
Okay. Have you spoken to Mayor Frank Scott Jr. personally?
I have not.
You have not. What about Kenton Buckner?
I have not. I know Kenton. I haven't spoken to Kenton since he left for Syracuse, and that was, congratulations.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How were you notified about landing in the top 10 finalist group?
I received a phone call from Human Resources.
Okay. Was getting that call and learning that you were part of the top 10, was that surprising to you?
I know what I'm capable of, and I know that I believe that that I could be the chief of any department in any nation, because I think I have great leadership skills. But at the same time, I'm a very humble person, so I don't take things for granted, because when you look at that list, there are a lot of qualified candidates, and so you just never know in this situation. My faith was that I would get an opportunity, but realistically, anything can happen.
What's the next step for you? What's the next thing for this process? What do you do from here until you hear something else?
Interview process is coming up next week. That hadn't been finalized yet, but the main thing is to continue to learn about the city. I think just like here in Norman, you continue to learn things every day, and so take an opportunity to learn more. I've subscribed to the local paper there. I'm talking to people. I watch things. I follow Facebook. I've studied the budget. I've studied the annual plans. Talk to some of the citizens there to see what they're looking for. So it's continually trying to prepare myself for the next step. Just because I'm a chief, it doesn't mean that I can't get better at prepping for a new job.
Last question for you: what are you most curious about or wanting to know more about when it comes to Little Rock, Arkansas?
I just want to know what the mayor's expectations are. That's my big thing, what the mayor's expectations are, and really hear face-to-face from the citizens of what they expect from their next police chief, and also from the police officers of what they expect. I think that once you know that, then you can start building for a successful career. But you've got to know what the mayor, who's the leader of the city, you've got to know what his expectations are. You can't guess them. You have to actually sit down and hear those from the citizens. The citizens are the reason why the police departments exist. So you've got to know what the citizens are looking for, and most of all, the officers, because the officers are the ones that you're going to be leading. You're going to be leading, and you're going to hope they absorb your philosophy and your vision in order to carry those out into the community.
What? Just a couple more things. If you can
Absolutely
kind of do like just different B-roll shots, and you can wrap the part of the interview
Yeah. You want two shots of you guys?
Yeah, maybe some two shots or some shots where you see both of these, just a few different shots. I was going to ask you, how do you think that, I guess, moving from a city that's predominantly a college town, what people might call a college town, into a capital city, how do you foresee that type of move going? I imagine it. You know, and you've been a chief in other cities as well. But what kind of process does that look like to you?
Well, I think it gives me an advantage because really and truly, I think I'm the chief of two cities. No, we still have a very active role in the university, so it gives. And the university is a diverse institution. So I think it gives me an advantage that I've seen the best of both worlds. I don't think that a chief can. I don't think a chief can help where they lead, because it's about where the openings are. It's about where you land, and so it doesn't matter to me. I don't think it should matter that the demographics of Norman, because if you look at my career, I've been in urban cities. Norman is 130,000 people. Little Rock is 200,000, so it's not that big of a difference. The ethnicity, the ethnic makeup doesn't really make a difference because keep in mind you're serving citizens, but you have to know what the needs of each ethnic group of those citizens are. So you can't ignore it. You got to realize there's different needs. I think that's what I bring to the table with having the university here. And I'll say it again. I'm lucky. There's two cities here. You're talking 30-some thousand students here, from all over the world. And they have different views on law enforcement, but we've been able to have a positive relationship with the university community, with the athletes, with the faculty, and things like that, with parents. And so I think it gives me a little bit of an advantage.
Has there been anything in your research about the city of Little Rock that has surprised you?
No, not really, because like I said, I'm very familiar with that city. I mean, for at least 25 years, I've been very familiar with that city, both formally and informally. So, how it's grown. It has beautiful facilities. That doesn't surprise me. I think one of the things is maybe some of the technology. I'm kind of a little bit surprised they don't have the body-worn cameras. I'm kind of surprised that they're just now looking at a new CAD and RMS system. I think there's also some talk about maybe a new radio system. So I'm a little bit surprised about that, but also know that throughout the nation in law enforcement, we don't have the funding that we had 5 to 10 years ago. And so, I mean, that's normal. That's not anything that's really unheard of. But when you're the capital city of the state, I mean, those are things that you actually, technology is a key in order for you to stay cutting edge in this profession.
I think that's all I've got, unless there's anything else that you want to add, anything else that you want the people of Little Rock to know about you.
Yeah, I think the people of Little Rock will find, if I'm fortunate enough or blessed enough to make it to the finals, I think what they'll see is a legitimate leader, a servant leader, a leader that's mentored, that lives in mentoring, a leader that gets out into the community, a leader that bridges gaps, that looks under the rocks for the problems. It's not necessarily the major problems that are hitting you in your face that are concerns. It's the problems that are hidden under rocks or out there in the community that you may not know about that can cause you the most problems. I'm that guy that gets out and I search for those problems. I want to hear about those problems. But the main thing, and you're looking at a person that has mentored young officers to the point that I can honestly say, and with pride, that I've had 5 officers under my command that have become chiefs of police in other cities, and they've taken the same philosophies and vision when it comes to community-oriented policing and 21st century policing, and also a positive mindset, a proactive mindset, and a guardian mindset. So that's my main focus, is ensuring that the police department has a guardian mindset and not necessarily a warrior mindset.
Good deal, Mr. Humphrey. I appreciate your time.